with the final chapter for economics class 9, that is food security in India. Now, if in scientific terms we try to explain food security, I can say it's a sum of buffer stocks and the public distribution system. However, we cannot understand this until and unless we are familiar with these terms. So let's first try to understand what is food security in very simple terms, and then we'll move forward on to a kind of specific terminologies. Now, in simple terms, I can say a person has a food security if there is sufficient availability of the food grains. So this can be in form of the domestic production, that is within the nation. So let's say you have India here. So whatever production is there within the nation, whatever imports that you are bringing from outside, and all the stock that has been there, like let's say I have the production for 2017, but I have a kind of stock that remains from 2016. So that stock plus the current production plus the imports is the total availability of the food grain. Now, it's not only the question about availability. Let's say all of my food grains or food grain silos are located in East India. However, the West India does not have any storage for food grains. For example, this is just an example to quote. So what is happening here is, despite the availability of food in the nation, there is poor accessibility. So this food should be able to reach each and every corner of the country. So the next important key aspect here is accessibility, and finally is affordability, that means at a correct price. So you must have a correct price at which this food grain stock is available to an individual. So you have availability, accessibility and affordability as the key concepts for food security. Now, why do we exactly require food security? If a person is well off, he can afford food, then definitely food security should not be an issue. However, in a nation like India, where you have numerous people below poverty line, so food security becomes an important concern. So it's mainly for the people, the BPL families, and the instances of natural disasters or kind of calamities that occur. So you have earthquakes, droughts, floods or tsunamis. So in all these cases, you require a stock of food grain in ready availability that should be there. Now, what would exactly happen if there is a shortage of food? If there is a shortage of food, the price would increase. Since the price would increase, less people will be able to afford the food stock, and as a result, the problem of starvation and hunger would increase, because there are very few people who can afford to buy food grains at such a high prices. As a result, there would be kind of severe starvations or hunger that could occur. We'll understand hunger in a separate section as we move forward. Now, there were instances of severe starvations that occurred during the various famines in India. Also, by the time there were many epidemics, and all these led to people with starvation. And one of the most commonly known famine in India was the 1942 famine of West Bengal. Other affected areas are Kalahandi and Kashipur in Orissa. Then you have Baran district in Rajasthan and Palamau district in Jharkhand. So these are some of the commonly affected areas. Now, who are the people who are food insecure? Firstly, the landless peoples, the casual laborers in the urban area. So let's say we can classify this into urban and rural. So under rural you would have landless laborers, landless farmers, then you have ill-occupied, like ill-paid occupations. Then you would have people engaged in traditional handmade art and crafts, traditional artisans. Then in the urban area you would have mainly the casual laborers, so who get employment only during the time of construction or kind of marginal employment that they get. Then again, social composition is one of the major phenomena that affect food insecurity. Natural disasters, as we said. Then nursing and pregnant mothers, and finally children under the age of 5 who are mostly prone to food insecurities. So these are some of the major sects which we can say are food insecure. Now what would happen, or what would be the incidences? First of all, there would be high rate of poverty. The tribal and the remote areas would be affected. The regions that are more prone to natural disasters, you would have more incidences of food insecurity. In India, you have certain pockets like South and Southeast, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa, West Bengal, parts of MP and Maharashtra, where you have kind of food insecurity, which is a major concern. Now let's come on to another term, that is hunger. Hunger, I can say, is an expression of poverty. That means you have a kind of hunger index that could determine the amount of poverty or the level of poverty of any nation. If we look at this graph, we can see 26 of the poorest nations of Africa contribute to 410 million poor population. However, merely 8 states in India contribute to 421 million poor population. That means in India, poverty and hunger is definitely a prime concern. Now this hunger can be categorized as two: the chronic hunger and the seasonal hunger. The chronic hunger is the inadequacy of the diet or the supply of food. It mainly occurs in the low income strata society. However, under seasonal hunger, we talk about the growing food, growing the crops, harvesting the crops, and the laborers in the agricultural sector get employment only during the time you have agricultural activities that is going on, like harvesting or growing of the crops. However, the other seasons, they do not have employment, and there is a kind of seasonal hunger that occurs. Again, in urban areas, as we mentioned, there is casual laborers, so they do not get employment throughout the year. As a result, there is again a cyclic phase of hunger that occurs. Now, International Food Policy Research Institute works on to calculate the global hunger index. It has demarcated 4 categories under which it classifies, or the components on which, based on which it decides the hunger rating of the nations. There are 118 nations that have been rated as of 2016. The first criteria is undernourishment. That means the amount of nutrition that one should get and one is actually getting, and the amount that one is getting is below the standardized level. The next is child wasting, that is people, children under the age of 5 years who are less in their weight as compared to the normal weight of that range. Child stunting is a kind of lower height, slower growth in again under children below 5 years. And finally, child mortality is the mortality in the age group of 5, up to the age group of 5. In 2015, there was a revision where child underweight was replaced by 2 separate categories, that is child wasting and child stunting. So till 2015, there were just 3 categories: mortality, underweight and undernourishment. However, in 2016, it was bifurcated into 2, that is child wasting and child stunting, as separate categories. In India 2015 ranking, India stands 97 out of the 118. That means in India, hunger is really a cause of concern. The only nations that were below India were the extremely poor nations of Africa, that is Niger, Chad, Ethiopia, Sierra Leone, and only 2 of the Indian neighbours, that is Afghanistan and Pakistan. However, 4 of the Indian nations, that is Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal and China, did much better as compared to India. If we look onto the India's rating over the years, it has been on a decreasing trend. That means we have worked, the higher range shows more amount of hunger problems. So we have definitely worked on to improvement, but still there is a lot more to go. In 1992, there were only 96 countries that were assessed, and India stands at a 76th position. In 2016, India became at the 97th position. Now here is how we compare the score with the other nations. So you have the various countries and the various scores that are given. So you have India, which has a kind of very high score. That means it has a kind of very poor situation in terms of hunger as compared to other countries. And if we look onto the India under the 4 categories that have been given under the GHI, the Global Hunger Index, we can see in India the worst of lies in the category of stunted children less than 5 years. So that's the major cause of concern. Now there are three definitions that we must be aware of while we talk about food security and hunger or poverty is one of the major issues. So first is hunger, the next is undernutrition and malnutrition. Malnutrition means deviation from a normal nutrition pattern. That means this deviation can be either towards the positive side or towards the negative side. That means there can be problem of undernutrition or there can be problem of overnutrition, which can be in form of obesity in young children. So malnutrition is any deviation from a standard normal. So you have undernutrition and overnutrition both as part of malnutrition. Undernutrition means deficiency in any of the forms, be it calories, be it vitamins, be it minerals. And hunger is the distress associated with the lack of availability of food, and this is one of the definitions that has been given by the Food and Agricultural Organization to explain what in exact terms is hunger. Now let's come on to India. India has been striding hard to provide food security to its citizens. There are various ways in which government has been working. The one of the most important measures that had been worked around post-independence was the concept of green revolution that first came into wheat, and then later on was expanded into rice. And both of these worked and tried to provide increase the production of food grains. However, the best worked out states were Punjab and Haryana. Now, there are few terms that we will understand first, and then we will see how the buffer stock and public distribution system works. Now, what happens is, you have a kind of agricultural crop that is growing in the region. So, what does government do? Government tries to procure these agricultural crops from the farmers and keep it as a stock with the government, with the Food Corporation of India, and that stock is known as a buffer stock. Now, when government is taking this crop from the farmers, it is taking it at a certain price, and this price assures the farmer even if there is not enough rainfall or not enough cultivation, farmer would get a minimum support price, which we call as MSP, from the government. That way, government tries to incentivize the farmers. Now again, this is the price at which government is procuring. So let's say if I am government and I am getting the food grains at this price, so that is the minimum support price. However, once I have this stock with me, I took it at a minimum support price, I have a buffer stock with me. Now I would try to distribute it to different people, and when I am trying to distribute it to different people, the price at which I would issue it, it would be known as the issue price. So issue price is the price at which government provides the food grain to other people, and that is a kind of standardized, or I could say kept at a very nominal rate, and that is what is known as the issue price. And all these together help in the working of the public distribution system. So here is how public distribution system works. You have farmers or producers, government, they provide the grains to Food Corporation of India, who maintains the buffer stock. The Food Corporation of India in turns provide the minimum support price to the farmers. So this is one channel that is done. Now this FCI allocates the grain to different states, and the states in turn give the central issue price. So this is the issue price that each and every state gives to the Food Corporation of India. Now this state would further distribute the grains to the fair price shops. We also call these as ration shops. And these ration shops would in turn provide the issue price back to the state. So this is how the public distribution system works, and it is very important. It has been very important in a country like India, where there is a severe problem of food availability. Now, so if we try to explain the process again here, you have the central government who would procure, it will store, it will transport it and allocate it in bulks to the state. Then there will be distribution that would be done by the state to the fair price shops or the ration shops, and from the ration shops it would reach to the consumer. Now under this PDS system, there have been three important steps or three important types of categories that have been made. First is the Antodaya Yojana, that is for the poorest of the poor. The next is the BPL cards, that is below poverty line cards, and all those who do not fall in the above two categories will be allocated with the APL card, that is the above poverty line cards. Now, how has been rationing done in India? It all started in 1940s. In 1960s, there was an actual shortage of the food grain that occurred. In 1970s, the poverty was analyzed by the NSSO and three important food systems were worked off. The first was the public distribution system that we already talked about. The next was the integrated child development system 1975, and finally food for work program in 77 and 78. Besides these, there have been poverty alleviation programs, the food for work program that have been going on. Under the previous slide, we have already talked about the Antodaya Anna Yojana, that is providing the grains to the poorest of the poor, and the Annapurna scheme that talks about providing the food grains to the senior citizens. Now, this is how we understand the schemes that have been launched and the basic focus. Now, PDS is the normal scheme that has been launched, that is the public distribution in 1992, it was working. Then there came the revamped public distribution system, started in 1992, specifically focusing on the backward blocks. Now here you have the issue price for both wheat and rice under each scheme. So let's say under PDS, rice was issued at 2.89, but under RPDS it was issued under 3.77. So these are the kind of issue price, and these are the volumes that they have been allocated. Then came the targeted public distribution system, started in 1997, and it was allocating food grains to both poor and non-poor. The Antodaya Anna Yojana, that's for the poorest of the poor in 2000, and the APS, the Annapurna Yojana for the senior citizens, that provided 10 kg of the food grains. Now next, what are the benefits and the actual limitations that the system has been facing? So the benefits are, first of all, it provides incentive to the farmers, it stabilizes the price. Even the poor section of the society who cannot afford to buy the food grains at a higher price has the availability of the food grain. It provides kind of security to the farmers who are producing the food grains, because they are not aware whether this would be consumed in the market or not, so they get at least a kind of minimum support price for that. And again, the most important thing is the areas of productivity where they are high, this could be supplied to the deficit areas, let's say the desert areas of Rajasthan. So that are the real benefits. However, the system was criticized a lot and is being criticized a lot for its limitations. The first of all is the instances of hunger are not decreasing, as we can see under the global hunger index that has been released. Then when you are storing the food grains, there is problem of pest infestation. So you have kind of you have to compromise on the quality of the stock that has been kept. Again, there has been large quantity of stock that goes unused, so it's being wasted. There is diversion of the grains that are going for the ration shops for the poor, which are being diverted to the open market at lower price. Then the quality, as we said, and the storage cost is indeed very high. So all these are the basic issues under PDS, and because of which there is a kind of real thought going under Niti Aayog to revamp this whole process of public distribution system. However, as we said in the starting, the food security comprises of two basic elements, the buffer stock and the public distribution system. So here is how we understand the stock that the government keeps and how the public distribution system goes around. So with this we cover the economics class 4 chapter. Chapter 4 for class 9. We will be covering further chapters for class 10 in the next classes. Have a good day ahead.